Reactivity plays a role in every relationship, and we've all been there. Acting like a 6-year-old, saying and doing things that we'll probably later regret. And in this episode, we're uncovering the art of self-regulation and how to calm your own storm before it spills into your relationship. This is one of the most essential relationship skills that you can learn, and it saves a lot of hurt and resentment. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed in the heat of an argument or wish that you could take back something you said or did, this episode's for you. Next on Master Your Marriage. Today, we're diving deep in one of the most crucial skills for relationship success, self-regulation. This is probably one of the most essential skills that we teach people. Most don't realize that relationships are a breeding ground for anxiety. We infect and we are infected by one another's moods and stress all of the time. And if we don't learn to self-regulate and calm our own selves down, then we just keep infecting each other. Then we end up creating more distance, more resentment in our relationships.
So true. Now, you might have found Robert's word anxiety a little bit surprising.
It made me anxious.
Right? So most of us don't think of anxiety this way. Most of us think of anxiety as worry or fear.
Yeah.
And you might even be listening right now going, oh, you know what? I don't really deal with anxiety. That's not really a me problem. I don't really have that much worry or fear in my life. But hang tight, because anxiety is probably a little different than what you realized in the past. So anxiety shows up differently than most people, even a lot of psychologists actually tend to think. So in relationships, anxiety is defined not by fear or worry, but actually it's measured by reactivity. So the more reactive you and your partner are, the more anxiety is actually present between the two of you. And if we're really being honest with ourselves, most of us experience some, if not a lot, of reactivity in our relationships, don't we? So that would be a pretty clear indicator that chronic anxiety exists within the relationship if there's a lot of reactivity going on.
So it's that storm that we just keep passing back and forth.
Exactly.
Yeah. I remember the days when I'd come home not happy with work and it would just sort of
spill out into everybody else.
Spill over all over everyone else.
And then everybody else is in that same mood.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about infecting each other.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the risk of sort of repeating ourselves a lot, what is reactivity exactly? Reactivity is when we regress into our adaptive child. And in past episodes, we called it the 3-year-old driving the bus or the 6-year-old, right? Into our lizard brain, which is where our limbic system sort of takes over here, right? Oddly, reactivity looks different for every one of us. For one person, reactivity may look like people pleasing. For another person, it may look like walling off or freezing up. And for some of it, it's a screw you and I'll throw up a stone wall around everything. And for others, it might be, let's go, baby, rumble, the fight is on.
Right.
But whatever form it takes, all reactivity is an indicator of chronic anxiety in your relationship.
Yeah, this was really interesting for me to sort of realize when I started working with couples is that just because how I react is one up, boundaryless, storm, anger, rage, lots of energy, that doesn't mean that's how other people react. Other people can be completely the opposite and shut down, kind of go behind and hide behind a wall. But it's all still reactivity. So here's the thing about anxiety in relationships. It is highly contagious. And Dr. Murray Bowen talked a lot about this idea of anxiety being contagious. And so I just want to share a famous story that he told to kind of illustrate this. So Dr. Murray Bowen was a psychiatrist. He specialized in teenage onset paranoid schizophrenia. And he worked in a hospital psych ward where families would commit their children when they became young adults, like 17 to 23, let's say. And one of his most famous stories comes from a family visitation day that was happening in the hospital. And this tiny little mother was coming to visit her son, who is now this large, full-size, grown-up man who had paranoid schizophrenia. And as she was walking towards him, she was flooded with all kinds of emotion, right? She was feeling guilt for entrusting him to the state. She felt a sense of failure as a mother. She felt a lot of fear.
Some abandonment things. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, here's this big man who's actually potentially dangerous. So she was feeling fear. as well. And so when she was going in to hug him, of course, what was her body language saying? It was hesitant. And this caused him to feel that hesitation. And then he kind of comes in with this equally tentative hug. And so then she pulls back because she senses his anxiety. And as she pulls back, she kind of blurts out, well, what's the matter? Aren't you glad to see me?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Feel that anxiety getting sort of pushed
just
back,
washed over both of you and then sort of expanded. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So this interaction sparked what would later become the basis for the family systems theory, which is that anxiety exists not just inside each of us, but also exists between us.
Right.
Right. And at the time, most psychiatrists were focused solely on what was going on within the individual.
Right.
Dr. Bowen's idea was revolutionary because he essentially said, hey, let's examine anxiety both within us and also between us.
Exactly.
And we want to see what's happening in the whole system.
Right. And family systems theory has really impressed a lot of the ways I look at couples and how I look at relationships. And it's really shifted from looking just at a particular individual and what was going on within that individual to looking more at the whole system and looking at the dynamics between people. So, this is really fascinating stuff, I think, because relationship dynamics affects so many different parts of our lives. It doesn't just affect marriages and families. It also affects our relationships with our grown children. It affects our workplace. If you're in a leadership role, of course, it plays a huge role. So every single relationship we have can be impacted by these relationship dynamics and how anxiety can be moved around within a group.
Yeah, without a doubt. Right. So when Charlotte gave that example about leadership and work, like you even have people come to work and they're in a bad mood and everybody else is sort of all of a sudden on edge.
Exactly.
So it's highly contagious.
It is. And so when I look at working with couples specifically, I'm not looking just at what's wrong with this person. Why does this one person have this maladaptive strategy or this one particular behavior? I start getting curious about how the whole group is functioning, the family, the relationship, the marriage, and what might be contributing to this person's, let's say, maladaptive behavior or response that they're having.
Absolutely.
So Bowen's primary solution to this problem was to stop focusing so much on others and to turn that around, flip that around, and start to pay more attention to ourselves. Specifically, he said we need to start paying attention to how we are both catching and spreading anxiety in our relationships. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some strategies, how to do that in just a couple of minutes. So Bowen also noted that chronic anxiety in a group, whether it was a family or a team or a partnership, led to something called fusion. So what did he mean by being fused? So fusion means becoming so closely connected to another person that it's hard to distinguish where one person ends and the other person begins. So it's difficult to separate our thoughts and our feelings from other people's thoughts and other people's feelings. And people often refer to this also as enmeshment.
Take, for example, the losing strategy we discussed in a previous episode called unbridled self-expression. Imagine that dad comes home from work feeling sad or angry or frustrated, as in my example, right? And the unspoken family rule becomes like, if dad is feeling sad, that none of us can be happy.
Ooh.
We all just have to match that mood.
Right.
That sounds terrible. Ooh. Dad's sadness then sort of takes over the entire family, and then the family mirrors this mood. And that means we got a whole family that's sad just because they're trying to mirror that, and it's very contagious. And this is what's called fusion.
Right.
In a healthy relationship or set of relationships, right? Dad should be able to feel sad. That's fine. While others can feel however the heck they want to feel about it. When relationships are anxious, there is often more fusion.
Yeah. Fusion, anxiousness, they go hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
So once again, chronic anxiety does not look like worry or fear. That's what most of us think it looks like.
Right.
Right. So I think it's worth just saying that again. It doesn't look like worry or fear. It is evidenced by reactivity and how this reactivity is spread between our group.
Right. And here's the thing about reactivity. When people are in their reactive state, they're no longer sort of acting their normal size.
Right.
And what I mean by that is they either get bigger, larger and louder, or they shrink and they sort of pull back and withdraw.
Yeah.
Right? So for example, imagine one partner goes off on an angry rant, and the rant might go on for what seems like forever. And there's blaming and criticizing and insulting their partner and belittling, and who by this point is just totally shut down.
The other person.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's no longer dialogue, right? Which is communication between two people. It's really a one-way communication or a monologue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in this example, this is a great example of how when we are in reactive mode, we can get big and loud, or we can get small like a little mouse, right? So one person has just become bigger and bigger and fills up the whole room, and they're now unaware that their emotions have basically silenced everyone else. And the other person has had to then just become really small in that situation because, again, there's no room for dialogue. There's no space for conversation or curiosity or connection. And so that is anxiety. That's an example of anxiety in a relationship that has spilled out and infected the whole group.
Yeah, I love this, that idea of it spills out. Like sometimes all of our emotions spill out on other people, and it sort of infects them. And I think sometimes it's easy for us to see this reactivity being large, but I don't think we
exactly
understand that reactivity can also be getting small.
Exactly.
Yeah, I sort of loved that point when it came to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what should we do instead of having this reactive, this
anxiousness,
getting big, and this anxiousness? What should we do instead of that?
Right.
Well, we have to deal with our own anxiety in a constructive way, and we have to stop diffusing and or spilling out our anxiety onto the group or into the marriage. Instead, we have to pull that anxiety back into ourselves and do something incredibly important: self-regulation, which we talked about at the top of the episode.
Right. So self-regulation is an essential relationship skill. Like Robert said earlier, it's probably one of the most important skills that we can all work on improving. Self-regulation is being able to calm ourselves down, calm down our own reactivity, which is essentially the same as calming down our own anxiety rather than diffusing it onto other people. Because when we're reactive, we're pushing that at other people's feet. We're dropping our adaptive child at other people's feet to deal with. And we need to pull that energy back in, do the self-regulation techniques, do the self-soothing. Self-soothing is shifting ourselves from that anxious, reactive limbic brain back into our higher order thinking, which is our prefrontal cortex.
Yeah. We got to be able to, once we're in the prefrontal cortex, that's planning and cognition.
Right.
Right. Dr. John Gottman's research is very clear on this point. When people try to solve problems from this reactive mindset, absolutely nothing productive happens, which I might ask you to think about the last time you had an argument. One, the next day, was it dumb? It's usually the dumbest thing you ever think of. And two, did you solve any problems?
When you were reactive?
Yeah.
No.
And so we've got to find a way to get out of this reactive mind. So, yeah, I mean, I think this looks different for each of us, right? But maybe we can talk about some ways to reduce anxiety in this reactivity.
So a big one is we've talked about on a lot of episodes is taking a break.
Yeah,
knowing
absolutely.
when to take a break, knowing how to take a break, what is an effective break. But there's some nuances to that we actually haven't talked about that we want to deep dive into next week. And we do a whole episode on that. So if we could maybe just put a pin in that for this week and move on and talk about some other things.
So what else could we do?
Well, What's your favorite?
My favorite activity for just sort of lowering my overall reactivity. Was that the question? Yeah. I mean, we know I'm going to say exercise. We'll talk about that in a minute, but I like cold plunging as well.
Yeah.
I think I'm less reactive when I cold plunge because, again, I think cold plunging helps me increase the distance from reaction and response.
Well, and even yesterday, you came home from work feeling a little bit of this sort of reactivity from things at work that had got you a little bit wound up. And first thing you did when you got home was you hit the cold plunge.
Yeah. And I didn't necessarily like the cold plunge.
No, but you were nicer after.
Yeah, I was, right?
Right.
And I think that helps kind of get it out. But, certainly being a movement scientist that I am, I think exercise has tremendous benefits, right? And it can really, really helpful. And so let's just give an example. A few months ago, we were not having the kindest conversation, Charlotte and I.
We were having a disagreement. We were dealing with trying to come up with a solution to something, and we saw things differently, and it was getting a little anxious.
Yeah, it was. We were just like getting frustrated, I think is probably the answer. We don't have the type of disagreements we used to.
Right.
So probably because we're using these tools. But so we said, maybe we should take a walk.
Yeah.
Right. I had to take a little bit of a break to calm down. And I think, You know, I mean, and that's an appropriate way to take a break, I think, because we had planned an activity like, hey, I'm going to get dressed, put on my shoes, put on some shorts. We're going to go for a walk. So we took a little bit of a break in that planning phase, and then went for a walk.
And it was
It was a tough walk for a little bit.
I think we were both pissed when we started the walk. I think if I remember body language correctly, you know, we weren't holding hands.
Oh, we were holding hands and skipping through the neighborhood.
No, we weren't.
No, we weren't.
Arms crossed. You know, what a jerk. How could you not see things my way? You know, all of those things. But as we started moving through the neighborhood, slowly we started to get a little better. We started talking a little bit more. We started working through it. We kind of negotiating as we were walking.
Yeah.
And by the time we got home, you know, we'd pretty much owned up to each of our parts in this situation, and we had negotiated a good outcome and found a win-win.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, this is your crap and this is my crap and I have to own it. And
so we came up with a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's lots of ways to get your body moving. You can sweep floors, you can clean the kitchen, you can go for a walk by yourself, or maybe with your partner, right? Yeah. You can ride a bike, lift weights, whatever gets you just moving and physically active. Moving your body can help calm your limbic system, bring down sort of this heightened state of anxiety. It also helps to burn off that extra adrenaline that you have in your system from being flooded.
Exactly.
So that's, you know, we have this gasoline and we just got to be able to burn it off, lower the heart rate, lower the respirations.
Yeah.
So
and
great things.
You might decide, I'm not ready to walk with him yet. I just need to walk by myself and go burn off the adrenaline first and then come back. Right. So
we walked by ourselves with each other.
We did for the first few minutes before we said anything, I think. But if you did want to just go for an actual walk by yourself, you might want to do some self-confronting while you're walking. This is something that I do as well. Like, instead of just ruminating and about what a jerk Robert's being, I try to self-confront. So as I'm walking, okay, what's my role in this? You know, and what part am I playing here? And sometimes it's nothing. I'm right. He's wrong. I'm totally right here.
Sometimes that's the case.
Yeah. I don't think I've done anything wrong, but I have to continue to push myself, you know, and continue to ask, like, what is my role here? What would it be like to actually be married to me? You know, how are maybe my behaviors, my anxiety, how's my anxiety contributing to his anxiety?
Absolutely.
How is my reactive behavior impacting your reactive behavior, and back and forth?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for some people, self-soothing makes it easier to self-confront. And for other people, I think self-confrontation is what you have to do in order to be able to self-soothe. So I think for me, walking and self-confronting and talking myself through, what is my role in this? What is my role in this? Who am I really to live with, is actually part of my self-soothing, self-regulating process.
I think it's the hard part though, right? Like, a lot of people don't do well at self-confronting, especially when they're frustrated. I think you have to be able to bring yourself down. So it's interesting that works well for you.
Well, I think it's because I tend to go one up and boundaryless on the relationship grid. And so when I'm one up and boundaryless, I am not self-confronting. I am acting entitled. And so the way to bring myself down is through self-confronting.
And that's an interesting concept, right? To be able to just how to add that in, because I know that when I'm one up and I'm like, I'm absolutely wrong. I can't believe there's so many jerks around me in my life today. Right. So like, it's hard to move from that space of being superior and one up.
Right.
To like, okay, maybe I need to reflect.
Maybe I play a role.
For me, the one thing that I do is, if I ever get to the point where I feel like everyone around me is a complete idiot, I just have this switch, because I've said it before. Like, if everyone around me is completely wrong, the person that is most likely wrong is me. Yeah. Like, everyone else around me is being an ass. It's not really the case. I'm likely the ass, and I need to just self-confront. And so, like, I don't know if that works for you guys, but it works for me to just say, like, it helps me dial myself back down. Right. Because if not, then I can just spill over even worse.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what we talked about so far, let's just backtrack a little bit. We talked about movement.
Yes.
We talked about moving and talking. We talked about going for a walk by ourselves.
Right. Maybe moving your body and exercise.
And we talked about how self-confronting itself might be a form of self-regulation to bring ourselves down.
Yeah, I think that pulls you into a good spot. Like, I think it's hard to do, but it's perfect, right?
So what else? What are some other things?
What else can we do? I mean, we talked about cold plunge. We like that. There's always some There's always journaling.
Journaling.
Like
I have a lot of clients who like journaling.
Yeah, we've had some journaling prompts before on the podcast. And I think that's good. So like taking pen to paper or keyboard or fingers, however, to your phone can also serve as release when you're just getting these things out. Like sometimes we feel like we're not heard. We just want to get things out. Right. And so maybe putting it onto a page, is better than letting it spiral out of control.
Okay. Yeah. So what else? Another one that a lot of the clients that I work with really love to do is some inner child work. And this can be really helpful, because within all of us, there still will always exist that child. And when we are reactive, when we regress, that child is in charge. And so as we talked about in the past episode, harshness doesn't help when dealing with our inner child. Instead, we can talk to our inner child with love, with kindness, with compassion, with gentleness, and we can envision bringing them over and sitting them down on the bench next to us and having a conversation with them and saying the words that you would have wanted to have heard from someone who loved you, words that maybe you did need to hear as a child, but maybe you never received them. So you could bring your child next to you, reassure your inner child that, it's okay. It's okay. You're doing okay. And it's okay to let me handle this situation from here on out. And you could let them know, you know what, even though we've made some mistakes here, it doesn't change your worth, right? That's human. You are still valuable. You are still important. You still matter. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's do one more.
Yeah.
What do you think? We've given some pretty good ones. What about breath work? Because I know that this is big for you.
I love breath work. I think breath work is probably the fastest way to impact change, to create change in ourselves when we need to self-regulate. It's powerful. And there's countless different methods really for breath work. You could go on YouTube and you can Google breath work and anxiety, and you can find all the different forms of breath work. But I think there's like 3 that I really want to key in on and talk about today. And you can try these. You can go on YouTube and find videos. We'll do a little demo sample of one. But what's the first one?
So the first one really is, and when I explain this, it's called diaphragmatic breathing, right? But I want you to just think back the last time you've seen a small child or a baby sleep, how their belly just raises and lowers. Like we don't think about that, right? So in order to engage this diaphragmatic breathing, right? The practice is place one hand on your chest and one hand over your belly, right? And then the hand on your chest should stay still while the hand on your belly rises with each inhale and falls with each exhale. So inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth, and let your hands sort of be the guide. So as we take this breath, and if you're watching on the YouTube channel, right, deep breath in, the belly hand comes out. So we're breathing into our belly, not into the top of our lungs, which is what we like to do. This signals our brain, and it signals the vagus nerve, a lot of things, just to slow the heart rate and provide some relaxation.
Great. Diaphragmatic breathing. So another effective breathing pattern is called 4-7-8. You can Google this as well. I learned it from Dr. Andrew Weil years and years ago, and it's been one of my favorites that I've used throughout the years. And so the way that you do it is you want to inhale for a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 7, and then exhale for a count of 8. And so as you're doing this, you put the tip of your tongue against the ridge of tissue that's right behind your upper front teeth. And then you inhale through your nose for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 7 seconds, and then exhale through your mouth for 8 seconds. And as you exhale, you make a little bit of a whoosh sound. And that again is stimulating the vagus nerve, which is going to activate that parasympathetic nervous system. And
you want to know something funny?
Yeah.
While you were doing that, I was doing the breathing.
Were you?
Yeah, I was like, I held and you said 7. I'm like, I just didn't do the whoosh.
You didn't do the whoosh.
Yeah, I didn't do the whoosh.
Well, we'll do that later.
So there's also this thing called heart focused breathing, heart math, right?
I love heart math.
Charlotte's really good at that. And that's where you focus all of your attention on sort of the center of your chest while taking slow and deep breaths. There's actually a little machine that can show you how well you're doing. And Charlotte just dials it in, and I am just all over the place, which tells you that I probably should be better at my breath work, which I'm not so good at. I think we should do a demo.
I think we should do one real quick too.
Okay.
So if you want to just get comfortable, sit in a comfortable seated position where you are safe to do so, and focus your attention in the area of your heart, and imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area. Now, I know we don't really breathe in through our heart, but I want you just to imagine that for just a moment, breathing a little slower and a little deeper than usual. Perhaps you can inhale for 5 seconds and exhale for 5 seconds, or whatever rhythm is comfortable for you. Just really honing in on and focusing in on that heart or chest area as the breath is flowing in and out. And as you continue to focus on your heart, breathing in and out through your chest area, I want you to make a sincere attempt to experience a calming feeling. Maybe it's care for someone, or peace, or love, or ease, your choice. But as you're focusing there, the center of your heart, continue focusing on your heart. Imagine your breath flowing in and out as you experience that feeling, whatever that feeling is. And then you would continue to do this and continue to breathe this way until your heart and your mind come back into sync, until you feel yourself calm down. To me, this is my favorite.
I think my favorite is when Charlotte does her hypnotic voice like that.
Mm-hmm. Put you to sleep.
Yeah. I wasn't quite asleep, but I definitely felt relaxed.
Right.
It's the best part about it.
So these are some good ideas.
Yeah. These are some great adaptive coping strategies, but let's take a moment to consider some of the other options that are used as coping strategies that maybe didn't make our list of like the things to do.
All right. What about ruminating on your partner's flaws?
Yeah. I don't think that made the list.
Okay.
Yeah. That'll just keep you mad. That's not the way to take a break.
What about binge eating?
Binge eating. While it's useful at Thanksgiving, I don't think it's probably the best.
What about porn?
Porn. That's oftentimes people use that for anxiety more than other things, but not on the list of ways to calm the system down.
What about impulse shopping or alcohol or substance abuse?
Yeah, all are just going to have to be a no, I think.
What about avoidance?
Yeah.
Just brushing it under the rug.
I mean, you can do that, but it'll come back and get you.
So technically, you get the idea. These are all things that could be ways to cope. They might even bring some temporary relief. But why didn't we mention them? Why didn't they make our list? Because while these methods may reduce your anxiety for a moment, they don't actually address the problem. Yes, they can soothe, but in the long run, they actually drown you in more anxiety.
Yeah.
Because you don't deal with the problems.
You're not self-confronting it at all.
They don't go away.
Yeah. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode. And we've covered a lot of ground on self-regulation, and we've learned some and explored some really powerful tools for calming ourselves down, whether that's through movement or journaling or inner child or breath work. Remember, the more we practice these skills, the better equipped we are to bring ourselves, our best selves, into our relationship. We'd love to continue this conversation over on social media this week. We'd love to hear any ideas that you have that may have been helpful for self-regulation or any other tips as well.
So if you found this episode helpful, please take a moment to subscribe to the show so that you don't miss any future episodes. And if you know someone who might benefit from what we talked about today, go ahead and share this episode with them. And lastly, leaving a 5-star review really helps us to reach more people, and we would love to hear your feedback.
So as always, be kind to each other this week, put each other first, and remember, it's the small things done often that make the greatest impact.